Dr. Edlin, would you like me to start? Okay. Hold on, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Here we go. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first academic affairs meeting of the 2021-2022 school year. I appreciate that you all made yourselves available this evening. I know that you all are very busy, and so I want to make good use of our time. What we talked about, our agenda for today, we had published. We have a curriculum update. We want to talk with you about a recommendation around 5th grade social studies, and we do have some guests here this evening, Dr. McLaurin and 2 representatives from our 5th grade team, Mr. Akawa and Mr. Blenheim, will speak about that recommendation. We've invited Dr. Davis to come join us this evening just to provide an overview for our Student Assistance Program, SAP as you may know it, and just to talk about how that program is functioning this year in our school district. We're going to talk about our curriculum and instruction website and some feedback we've gotten from the community and some changes we're proposing to make. I want to share with you some updates from our Office of Teaching and Learning, which involves Dr. Davis, Dr. Van Boren in terms of student services, Mr. Oliver, our Director of Technology, and so we have 3 updates for you about that. And then tentatively, we would propose quarterly meetings this year, and that would roughly put us around December. So we just want to talk about that a little at the end. Okay to get started? All right. So I feel like the one thing I've been doing since I've been in this role is talking about social studies. And so I've learned a lot this year around the art and craft of social studies instruction. And I'm excited to bring to you our final social studies recommendation for this year, which is for our grade 5 program. So I'm going to pull my notes up for myself so that I don't confuse myself, pardon me. So one of the things that we wanted to talk with you about specifically was thinking about how we got here. And so as you may recall, we've spoken about social studies at the middle school and in the high school for this school year, last school year, and we made recommendations for those resources. We had been also working on our 5th grade resource, but by the time with all the things that were happening with the pandemic and the review of the materials, when we met with the 5th grade team, what we decided was we were going to slow down a little and make sure that we did our due diligence and took our time to carefully look at the curriculum materials, the standards, and of course, the best practices around social studies instruction at the elementary level in order to inform how we proceed. Excuse me. And so what we ended up doing as the 5th grade team made up of 3 representatives, Mr. Okawa, Mr. Blenheim, and Mrs. Ellerson, who's not able to join us this evening, worked to review the standards and look at major curricular areas of focus. This fall, we then sort of set a broad net for the publishing materials that were available that aligned to the areas of study that we were looking at. And so we started with reviewing 6 materials at a cursory review. After we completed those 6 cursory reviews of materials, we then focused our time on 3 vendor presentations where we invited the publishing house to do a formal presentation on those materials for our team. After doing that, we reviewed how those materials lined up on a set of criteria. Along the way, there were rubrics of evaluations that the team used to help us target particular areas. And on the other side of those vendor presentations, the team was unanimous in their recommendation for our selected material. And so I'd like Dr. McLaurin just to talk a little bit about, from his perspective, sort of the process and how we got here. And then I'm going to ask the teachers to talk about their recommendation for the TCI Social Studies Alive America's Past book, which conveniently the sample finally arrived today. It had been back ordered, so we got it today. I'll ask Dr. McLaurin, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McLaurin for a minute.
Thank you, Dr. Johnston. As you shared, our work really started last spring, and I really want to take this opportunity just to thank Mr. Okawa, Mr. Blenheim, and Mrs. Ellerson. They spent a tremendous amount of time really looking closely at the 5th grade PDE standards to make sure that we were covering all the state standards for 5th grade social studies. And then also in doing that work, they were also able to cross-reference and just also dig into different standards, such as we were looking at our standards over the course of the year, just looking at our social justice standards as well to make sure that we were also able to make sure that they were also recognizing the different types of work that we wanted to pursue. The team did a great job going out and just looking to see what were the current social studies resources that were out there. We provided a few, but they were actively looking, and they provided with a few recommendations to Dr. Johnson and myself as well, just to take into consideration. They spent time over the summer as well, working together to really fine comb the details on the document they created that has the standards and what they wanted to cover. They were also working as a team to develop essential questions as well for each of the units of study. And so when we came into the start of the school year, we had to really take a closer look at our time frame. And Dr. Johnson was super flexible with the team and shared, where do we want to go? We can make this process move slow, or when do you want to have this resource? And as a group, they really worked diligently combing through, examining the standards, looking at the different resources. And one of the things that I really want to highlight for our school board is that while they were doing that work, they were challenging each other to ask some really good critical questions. For example, how is this resource going to be perceived by all students? Does this particular resource match up with what we want to be able to accomplish as a school community? And being a part of their meetings, you heard that happening throughout. And so, the work that they did to really kind of narrow in to land in choosing social studies alive, I really applaud the three of them for doing this work. I also appreciate just their attention to just really vetting each of the resources. As Dr. Johnson mentioned, after they reviewed the resources, they had to complete a survey against, the National Social Studies standards to make sure that these resources were reliable and were appropriate for our students. And they went through very detail-oriented, provided specific targeted feedback that really helped us really narrow in what resources we wanted to choose. And then when we got to the phase of when we had the presentations, they asked really good critical questions about the resources, how they could be adaptable for students. They were looking at the ranges for all students. Could it be supportive of our inclusive practices for students who may have individualized education plans? Does this resource challenge our students who could be extended further and can really be challenged in social studies? And so I really applaud the three of them for just really working hard together as a team, but asking the critical questions that need to be asked when you're looking to make such a big adoption for social studies as we are. And so I really appreciate their efforts. I think this process ran pretty smoothly, but Dr. Johnson, you set up a really good blueprint, but I think our team really executed a very thorough plan. And so I'm excited for the proposed recommendation for Social Studies Alive as the fifth grade social studies curriculum resource for fifth grade.
Thank you, Dr. McLaurin. I appreciate that. I think one of the things that I've mentioned to our members of our school board is how involved and engaged our teachers are, K-12, in curriculum revision activities. And in particular, because it matters. It matters what the students are going to be able to use and access, but it also matters something that feels like a good fit for our teachers, that feels like it's aligning to what we believe is best practice. Critically, throughout this process, the teachers were able to ask questions about, would the students be interested in what was being presented to them? Was the learning going to push them to make connections to their real life? And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Blenheim and Mr. Okawa just to share with us sort of what about this resource seemed like such a perfect fit for our fifth grade. Gentlemen.
All right, good evening. Yeah, and so we're also really excited about this resource as well. We just thought it'd probably be best if we just prepared a statement from Sean, Lauren, and myself and the fifth grade teachers. So along with Dr. Johnson, Dr. McLaurin, and Mrs. Mack, members of the fifth grade team got together to review possible social studies resources. And our focus was to find a resource that offered different historical perspectives, engaging lessons and activities, and multiple methods to learn about the past. So throughout the process, our committee favored the Teachers Curriculum Institute, or TCI resource. And what's nice about this is the TCI resource comes in both digital and print versions. If needed, the digital resource would be helpful, obviously, for distance learning. TCI also offers students a variety of modalities to learn about our nation's history. And from interactive activities to games, to the ability to model and take notes electronically. We're pretty positive. After seeing the presentations, and confident that TCI is going to offer an engaging experience for our students. And we're definitely looking forward to working with this resource to provide students with the most authentic learning experience possible. So we're definitely excited, looking forward to this program, and we think it offers a lot of great things for the students. It's engaging, it's fun, the activities are fun for the kids, which we thought was also very important, just to sort of get them out of their seats and moving. I remember when we were doing this process that when I was in school, like that's when I learned the best, was when I was able to get up and engage and experience and sort of work together on things. So we feel like this program offers a lot of great things, and it's going to be really beneficial for our kids.
Thanks, Mr. Blenheim. I really appreciate that. I think one of the things that we also talked about is how important fifth grade is in preparing our students for middle school learning and making sure that the opportunity to really learn how to use the text to make connections, but to annotate, draw, make personal connections, take notes, and transfer that information to informing their perspectives and opinions is essential for our young learners. And so we really relied on our final selection on the standards and the recommendations for elementary social studies instruction from the National Council for the Social Studies, for the Teaching of Social Studies, because we thought that was a really powerful way for us to organize our thinking. And so with that, we did prepare for you, and I'll share with you the SDST textbook adoption form, because you know we love a good form here in school districts. And so again, our team rated this particular resource. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Sorry. I was showing it to you like I was sharing my screen. There you go. Okay, that's better. And so again, we've completed this document for you. Our average score across the board was really easy 3s. These comments that you see on the right-hand side came from our teachers in their review. We pulled these comments from the input they provided during the vendor presentations that we saw. And so as you can see, we had really positive results about the way in which we were thinking about this. We really appreciated sort of the magic of the digital learning, in that our students who needed their Lexile or the reading level adjusted, we have the ability on the teacher end to do that, to make it an inclusive experience for our students. I think, as Mr. Blenheim mentioned, there's both print and digital resources, so allowing our learners to have paper and pencil. And as I showed you the book, it is a consumable textbook. So students are able to receive a copy, they can write in it, they can highlight it, they can practice those skills. But for some learners who want to do it digitally or at home, they can do that also. They don't have to carry this book back and forth because they do have access to it digitally when they're not in school. We liked that it was consumable. We thought that was a different way to go, and that was helpful. The teacher resources were well organized on their website, which allowed everybody to know what was available to them, so they didn't feel like that was going to be difficult. The greatest concern we had, and I don't know that concern is the right way, but the way this particular company provides their professional learning is through asynchronous self-directed coursework. There's not a professional developer who will meet with our teachers live. It's just not a part of the products that this company sells, but they do have a very robust, very well-developed scope and sequence for teacher learning. So that was probably the weakest area, and I think weak is still relative in that they had really built digital resources, and they have a support team that's available to you at any time if you have questions. As I mentioned, we looked at 5 other resources in addition to this. The other selling point to me personally was that we were looking at a resource that had a 2022 copyright. It was just updated, so we're getting the newest resources with the most current information and approaches to student learning. In true transparency, it does cost some money. So with your support, oops, that's not what I meant to click on. We will be requesting for the board to approve the purchase. I'm sorry, let me get to my right, there we go. There's my quote. In order to buy the licenses, it's a 6-year subscription for digital and print. They will send out new consumable books for 6 years for us for $26,050 and of course 50 cents. So our hope after today's presentation and any questions that you might have is that you're supportive of the recommendation for us to take this to the board for approval next week when we meet.
Now, Damien, will those, I'm assuming that the digital and the consumable, well, I'm not sure about the consumable actually, but the digital would be updated on a regular basis then to?
That is what they told us. I'm sorry, Kat. That what the information that we got was there would be updates as they come known, especially because it's a new publication. They're confident they'll find typos and things like that, but that this was the most substantive review or change they had made in a number of years.
Damien, I have a question. For the 6-year subscription for the figure you just quoted, would that include replacing the consumables yearly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the part that it surprised me, Dr. Ellen.
Okay. Yes, yes.
I was concerned. I was a little edgy about when the quote was going to come in. Like,
Right.
what was that going to cost us? And Dr. McLaurin was pleased to learn that it was not going to come from his building budget, that it was going to come right out of this first purchase, right out
of the first purchase. And that would also include any additional students who will be moving in. Okay, not based on our current numbers.
We used our current number and added some.
Oh, and added some. Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I assume that, you know, that because we're trying to, you know, have a continuum of curriculum, that this does, I know you did say that this supports the middle school curriculum and gives it a nice underpinning. I mean, do we see some dovetailing, or could you just talk a little bit more about that for me?
That's a wonderful question, Mrs. Sarsfield. And I think one of the things that's important is that we realigned the social studies curriculum at the middle school to focus on world history, going back to sort of the beginning of time. But one of the things that we did was pull out geography of the 6th grade unit. And so what we liked about this is it had an emphasis on that understanding of geography embedded in the curricular resource. And I think that what the middle school is most hopeful is that students will understand how to engage in this higher level learning, how to engage in sort of careful review of documents, how to understand questions they can ask to understand from multiple perspectives. How are they engaged cognitively in making connections between history from the sort of the start of the nation until today? Why does that matter now? Like, how are they making those connections? So I think for the middle school, their greatest hope is that they have this curiosity and desire for inquiry and then a way to document and examine their learning. So I'm optimistic. Once we get going, what I'm going to work with a team around is making those connections, not only like after a year of this, what did we learn? And is there anything we need to sort of refine so that that's smoother for our students?
And if you could, the name of the company, I saw TCI on your adoption form. And
yes.
That's the name of the company?
It is Teacher Created. Chris, you just said it.
Teacher Curriculum Institute.
Teacher Curriculum Institute. I keep wanting it to be Teacher Created Institute.
Teacher Curriculum
It's
Institute.
Teachers Curriculum Institute.
Okay, great. And also this history for the 5th graders, it focuses on, is this US? What is the focus here?
We are focusing on, to begin with, like the indigenous people coming into North America and South America through Asia. We're also focusing on, from there, what resources and other things that the Native Americans and the indigenous people used within their region. We go from there to talking about like the first European settlers coming into North America. What we really liked about this TCI resource is prior to this, our social studies curriculum had a very European-centric view, where it was really about like the colonists coming over to North America, and it really left out a big portion of, you know, there were people here before that that certainly did not have the same point of view as, you know, European colonists coming to America. So we like the fact that this had aspects and activities and lessons that really centered around indigenous people to start off with. But we go through the European colonization of North America, all the way in up to the Revolutionary War, and then the beginnings of the Articles of Confederation.
Okay, any content on other cultural perspectives beside the indigenous people focus as well as the European settlers?
Well, yes. There's also the aspects of African slaves being brought over as well. So there's that's a huge perspective as well that the TCI program does a nice job of hitting as well.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
For that question, Dr. Etlin and Mr. Okawa, I appreciate that, as that's one of the things I wanted to know, just a little bit more depth on the diversity of the information and what the students are learning. I'm glad to hear that it is an updated copyright, that it certainly sounds like this is a resource that's, going to be, challenged, but also kind of look at maybe history at this grade level in a different perspective. I think we're all in a society and a time right now that's evolving, that's changing, and that's challenging for all of us, including our students. So I certainly appreciate hearing the diversity of the content and the change in the perspective, and that it will evolve, and the resources that are supportive for our teachers and administration, and that the students get the most out of it. So thank you all for all of your efforts in being able to, recognize where we are, what our needs are, and how important it is for us to make, to keep updated information and, give our students, broader perspectives on things.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I can speak for our fifth grade team. That was a major point in us looking for a different program, and some of the other programs that we saw didn't necessarily have the multitude of different perspectives that were shown. So that's really one of the sticking points of why we liked TCI so much.
And I think that was in the vendor presentations, our fifth grade team really pushed the vendors to answer those questions. How were multiple perspectives conveyed, integrated, and brought out, and opportunities for students to see this from multiple perspectives, so that we have a 360-degree understanding of events that happened. And I think the teachers, to their credit, really weren't interested in any material that didn't allow them to do that and promote that within their classrooms, which was not only impressive to me as a colleague, but as an educator, that they had worked so hard to really think about this, because there is no more controversial or challenging material to adopt right now than social studies instruction. And again, I've spent a lot of time with social studies since my tenure as assistant superintendent, so I've learned a lot. And I respect the work that the team did here, because I think it's complicated. Any other questions we can answer for our board?
I feel like my colleagues have asked all of my questions, so I'm good. Thank you.
I would just like to thank the team for all of your hard work and your diligence and your depth and your conscientiousness and consideration. So thank you.
And I also would like to share the same sentiment. It is truly evident of all the work, the thought, the reflection, the research that has gone into this project. And as a board member, I'm very, very pleased and happy for all of your effort and thought into this. And I do hope that, just as I am pleased, I hope that our community will be pleased as well.
Thanks, Dr. Etlin.
Dr. Johnson, if I could just jump in, because I want to make sure it's official here. So the four of you on the committee would like us to add to the board agenda next Tuesday a motion to adopt this textbook at $26,050 for a 6-year digital and print subscription to TCI.
I'm in agreement.
Moving forward?
Yes.
I would, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody. We'll take care of that.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Okawa, Mr. Blenheim, I'm forever grateful that you were able to join us this evening. It's so important for our board to hear directly from our teachers and the process that you went through. So thank you very much for your time this evening. And while you're welcome to remain with us to talk about these other items, if you have something else to do, I totally understand you excusing yourself. You too, Dr. McLaurin, we're happy to have you, but I understand if you all have other things to do this evening. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
You too. As always, I appreciate all of your input and your perspectives. Let me get my screen to move. There we go. Our next update for you is from Dr. Patterson Davis, who's going to speak with us about our student assistance program. Dr. Davis.
Good evening. So as many of you know, we have many programs that support our students, and specifically in the areas of mental health. So this is one of many programs that are offered to students at various levels. So the Pennsylvania Student Assistance Program, better known as SAP, is a systemic team process which is used to mobilize school resources to remove barriers to learning. So it's designed to assist in identifying issues like alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, mental health issues, anything that really would prevent a student from reaching their potential. The primary goal is to help kids to just overcome any of these barriers. So as a district, we have been actively growing our SAP program since 2015. And this is an annual renewal. Many of you have voted on in the past. So this is just a little bit more information about something that is a continual process. It's not different than it was in the past. I'm just providing some additional context. We do have a SAP counselor that works in 3 out of our 4 schools in the district. And at this time, we're exploring how we might provide some SAP programming to the K-2 school. We haven't provided it in the past because we have so many other supports for that level. And so we're trying to figure out with Dr. Merkel whether or not that is something that we should expand to all 4 buildings. So at this time, Erdenheim, the middle school, and the high school all have a SAP counselor. Erdenheim has 1 counselor, the middle school and the high school share the same counselor. So our service provider is Aldersgate, and they're located in Willow Grove, but they are on site. So it's not as if we have to go off site to get these services. They come into the district to provide these services to our children. If we need to send someone for what's called a SAP referral, sometimes families do need to go over to Aldersgate to engage in that, or if they decided to get outpatient services through them. So the outside counselors, they come once a week to our SAP meetings and take a look at the referrals with us and offer us a variety of resources and support. They provide individual and group sessions depending upon what is needed in the building at that particular time. And they have also provided classroom lessons on a variety of topics depending upon what it is that the students seem to be struggling with at that particular moment. And the last thing they do is a program that the county calls alternate sentencing. Because it's under the crime and delinquency section of their work, they call it alternate sentencing. What it actually looks like for us is, let's say that a high school student gets in trouble for vaping, as an example. The consequence on our code of conduct would be the 3-day suspension for vaping. This alternate sentencing allows our principals to have the opportunity to say, hey, listen, you got in trouble. You can either take the 3-day suspension, or you can take a 1-day suspension and take this really fantastic class that teaches you all the dangers of vaping. So it gives an alternative. I don't think the principals have an example of a family who did not pick the alternative sentence, because for the most part, parents are like, send my kid to learn why this is not okay, or try to have me teach them that it's not okay in the 3 days that they're out of school. So more often than not, they will select to have the child participate in the alternate sentencing. It goes along with, I'm sure you've heard of they do some of this if you get in trouble outside of school too. If a child gets in trouble for underage drinking or something like that, they will often send them to some sort of educational program. And so this is in line with that system. We are allocated money each year from the county, and because Dr. Johnson and I are pretty good about responding to these emails, sometimes they'll give us extra if they have some left over, because we're really good about responding to them. And apparently that's like a big deal when you write them back. So every year they say, hey, this is how much money you've been allocated. These are the ways in which you could use it. How do you think you want to use it? I work with the principals to try to figure out what that might look like. but it's never at a cost to us. And we can customize what we ask for, and then we can make adjustments within reason throughout the year. So let's say that we say, oh, we want to run a lesson on suicide prevention to our students when we plan this in August, but during the year we notice, hey, we've got a really big vaping issue. We can like cash in other activities and move and get a vaping activity, right? It just, there's a little bit of flexibility. It's not like I can bag the whole thing, but I can make subtle adjustments as the principals indicate that they need. And we can also use the Safe to Say system. A lot of times will guide us in terms of what it is that the kids are reporting to us and what they might be struggling with, and that might give us some more information, as well as discipline referrals give us more information. The way that a SAP referral works is staff can make a referral and families can make a referral with staff support. So the link is available to our staff, and it asks them to go through and identify different barriers, different behavior changes. It's a pretty thorough referral process. That referral is then routed to an administrative assistant who then pulls a pretty comprehensive profile, takes a look at attendance, looks at discipline, looks at report cards, any kind of information that we might have in some of our student information systems. That then gets sent back to the SAP team so that they have a really robust file to work with. The team, which is made up of teachers, counselors, nurses, school psychologists, principals, then meet and discuss what possible options we could have to support a child who's referred to SAP. And if there's an emergency referral, there's a place on the report that basically says, thank you so much for sending this in. If this is an emergency, please contact. And then it lists who that they should contact within the building, so that if there is an urgent need, that child gets those needs met urgently. Once a child is made a SAP referral, then they are assigned a case manager from that team. They then make contact with the family and talk about different services that might be available, some of which are provided by the SAP counselor, some of which are other resources that we may have either in district or outside. And families have to consent to all of this. So you can't meet with the SAP counselor unless you are informed and you know that your child is meeting with them to participate in group or things like that. And the last thing is the contract that you'll see for board approval is for the current planning for this year. So for this year, it includes prevention resources, mental health supports, including attendance at our SAP meeting, running groups as needed, the SAP screenings, which oftentimes will lead to some community supports, individual MH3 services, and MH3 is just their fancy word for mental health 3, and it is free support for families. And this year last year they expanded it. It's not just the student, it's also for the family, for up to 3 free hours of counseling, almost the way that you would think of like an employee assistance program, right? That you can get a certain number of free therapy hours. This kind of works that same way. Each year, the kids are eligible for up to 3 hours per student. It also includes this year some classroom programming, at different levels, and then the alternative sentencing. So that is our SAP program in a nutshell. Questions?
Dr. Davis, I'm just going to clarify one thing, is that we're not going to take this to the board because there's no cost. It doesn't meet the requirements to have it board approved. We wanted to share it here so that our academic affairs team understood that we, again, were accessing at no cost services to our students to supplement the things we already are lucky to provide in our school district. So I just wanted to clarify that one piece.
Okay, I have a question. Where can a parent find a SAP referral form, or how would they go about making a referral if they decided they wanted to have some support for their child?
They would call their school guidance counselor, who would talk them through the process. Yeah, we went back and forth about families making direct referrals, and SAP allows the training, right? Says, it really depends on your community. What we thought was that it was better for a staff member to ask some of those probing questions and to kind of get to the heart of the matter, so that we could kind of talk through this resource, that resource might work or might not work, instead of just asking a family who might be worried to check off some boxes. That seemed a little impersonal to us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Davis, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Is this a new service that the district is offering, or is this something that we've always had that's maybe being revamped, or is this something completely new?
Nope, it's exactly the same with a couple of tweaks each year, but we've been doing this since 2015.
Okay. And then my second question was in terms of you talked about the difference between if a student has, you know, done something that requires, or that based on our policy would be a suspension, then this is an alternative. Mm-hmm. Is this offered regardless to what the suspendable item or issue is? Is it offered at like anytime there's a suspension for anything?
No, nope. Right.
The alternative for?
Correct. So like there's a course on alcohol, there's a course on marijuana, there's a course on vaping. So it's restricted to the areas in which SAP offers an educational program.
Gotcha.
Just for
I wish vandalism was on there. It's not.
Their programs are evidence-based and research-based, Ms. Jordan. So they're very particular in what they'll allow us to use and what they offer. And that's been helpful to us to look at some of this. And I'll remind you that they've been engaged in our schools for a number of years, and we've bought some classroom programs to our students to try to be preventative in nature.
Okay. And is this program information easily accessible and to families? Like is this on the website? Like where would I go if I am experiencing an issue with my family or one of my children? So, where would I find that?
Under our student services page, there are a variety of resources listed there, and our social workers and school counselors, any member of the clinical team, would help a family work through any supports that they might need. But the student supports, that area of the website has some really great resources. And it's actually an area that the clinical team and I are working on this year at even expanding that. So hopefully it'll be even more robust by the end of this year.
You all have done a wonderful job of creating it so that when families are in need, that it's easy to navigate so that they can be independent, or following a meeting with the school counselor or a member of the clinical team, that they can memorialize those links. So you guys have done a great job. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you very much.
I think that we struggle, right? Because I don't want to overwhelm families, right? So it's like you want to put enough information out there so that folks can access it, but not too much information that it becomes overwhelming. And so we've tried to kind of strike that balance to make sure that critical resources are there, but that if a family wants a recommendation for outpatient therapy, then the better bet is to have a conversation with somebody on our clinical team to kind of talk through who might be a good resource. Does that make sense?
Any other questions for Dr. Davis before I send her on her way also? Thanks, Dr. Davis. I appreciate your time.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
As always, we have lots more information than we have time. So one of the things that Dr. Yannicone and I had a chance to talk about, and in reflecting on the last couple of board meetings, as well as feedback we've gotten from families, is our curriculum and instruction website. And one of the things that I work really hard to do with the team I work with is recognize that every time we hear feedback, it's a chance to make us better. And that if the intended audience of our website is our community and families so that they can get information, then it needs to be updated as such. And Dr. Yannicone had the best of intentions when she sat in this chair to do that work. Then that COVID thing came and took us a little bit off point. And so now we're trying to sort of circle back. And so I just wanted to let you know that we heard that feedback loud and clear in the last few weeks. And I'm particularly grateful for the families who have shared that information with us, that they're looking for easy places to find links to our primary resources for a course or a document. And so throughout this year, I'm going to look to redesign and supplement it to make it a little bit easier to navigate, either by grade band, by elementary school. So I need to think about it, but just wanted you to be aware as our team that we're on it. But I want to do it and do it well. And so I want to take a look at some of the other school districts near us who might have exemplars to share where it is really easy to navigate, and try to see what we can beg, borrow, and steal to create here so that it works for our families and our community to give them the information that they need. Any questions about that?
Well, thank you for that, Dr. Johnson, because I think we have heard from our community on a number of occasions just how challenging it is for folks to navigate, you know, not just the curriculum site, but just kind of like some of our sites. And I know we've been talking about, you know, making that information easier and more accessible. That was one of the reasons I asked Dr. Davis about the resources for families, because community members that I talk to from time to time often say they, struggle with where to find information, where to get the help, who to talk to. The information on the site is, may not be as easily accessible for things. So I'm so glad to hear, we are taking all of those, comments into consideration and knowing that, families need to easily, to have an easier way of accessing all that the district has to offer, because we have so much to offer our families in the way of, supports of various kinds. So this is good.
And it's so, you think it's intuitive, like the way that my brain thinks to organize it works for everyone else, but the reality is that's not the case. And so I think what we've heard in that feedback is just because it makes sense, or why didn't we list some of these things? But it's not, I don't want to just fix one thing. I want to sort of take the opportunity to rethink it a little bit and make sure that we're responsive to what we are hearing from families, that they want it sort of easy to navigate and manageable. So we'll be looking at that. So I appreciate your support, but I did just want to let you know that that wasn't lost on me, but it is going to take a minute. It's not something that's a couple clicks of the button. And I think that even building the SEL component, as we've been asked by our community to do, was always a priority for us to do through the summer and just move to the bottom of the list. But the more I heard it from the family, Dr. Yannicone and I agreed it was a pressing priority for the school year. So we took care of that, but it's coming. So I'm going to try to give you quarterly updates on where we are and be able to share that with you.
So would it be worth potentially including that in some of the newsletter blasts from the schools that we're working on updating that, and, just giving the status to the public as well, with maybe, once something is updated, just including the link in the newsletter, just because if you just keep everybody informed and keep it out there, then, people that are concerned will know what we're working on and what we're doing.
Sure, let me make myself a note because I don't want to forget. That's a great idea. And so I want to make sure but you're right, I can add a curriculum update to the building newsletters for them to build in. That's a great idea.
Dr. Johnson, if I could just highlight here, in the work we're doing as an administrative team with the faculty and staff around equity, and our internal audit that we're conducting, one of the areas that is coming up is how we communicate with our constituents and the extent to which that communication enhances or inhibits access and opportunity. And so it is a prime area of focus for us as a team. Because as Dr. Johnson said, we might think, oh, I feel like the curriculum is posted for this particular course, and another course, perhaps it is not. Or, oh, here's where you find SAP information. And for another parent, it could be very difficult to find. And so it's one of the areas that we want to do some further work in assessing. And then we're constantly, as Dr. Johnson said, trying to update information as soon as we have it. It was part of my work 2 years ago, prior to COVID, that I was going to do this review of the website as a whole, because it's a huge project just to look at the website. So Dr. Johnson and I talked about moving it up on the priority list because we're hearing that from the community. And we do consider it a question of equity. right? Equitable access, being able to find what you need in resources and information on the website.
Thanks, Dr. Yannicka. All right, my last sort of is just the things I wanted you to know that were happening within our schools that we had either spoken about before or that you might hear rumblings about so that you were prepared. You'll remember in the spring, we put a lot of requests in front of our board for approval, for expenditures, for updated technology. We talked about our smart boards at Erdenheim, the middle school and the high school were well past their prime, and it was time to update them. And our teachers have become so much more sophisticated in their use of instructional technology that the timing was perfect to do so. So I'm pleased to report to you that we've gotten 63 of those smart boards in. 47 are at Erdenheim, 8 at the middle school, and 8 at the high school. We're not done. We are waiting for 22 more to come. And 11 goes to each of the middle school and the high school, which will outfit our entire school K-12 with updated smart technology in the classrooms that allows interactive learning for our students and our staff. We talked to you last year about the need for more updated Chromebooks with a little faster speed and greater depth of performance. I am pleased to report that most of them have arrived. We've distributed them to 11th and 12th grade last week. This week, 10th graders are getting theirs. For reasons beyond me, 76 of them were damaged in shipping. So they had to go back and we're waiting for the replacement 76. So when those arrive, Mr. Oliver reports to me that then we will be able to distribute them to the 9th grade. Mr. Oliver, in sharing with me what he'd like me to share with all of you, is that he has honored 1,700 tech tickets since July 1st. Nearly 600 of them are by students, from students, for students, about the care and repair needs of their Chromebooks. So continuing to emphasize with our community and families and our students the need to be careful with their technology, that they do break, and no matter what we do, we've got to be a little bit more careful. So that care for equipment is crucial as we continue to get new technology. Questions around our technology update?
No.
Yes. Could you go back and further define the smart boards in terms of the numbers? I heard 63 at Erdenheim, and what were the numbers for the middle and high?
63 total in the first shipment.
Okay.
47 went to Erdenheim,
Mm-hmm.
8 to the middle school, and 8 to the high school.
Thank you.
We're getting 22 more, 11 for each of the secondary schools. And they have been ordered. We're just waiting for their shipment.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else on technology?
I can only comment on the Chromebook because I've seen the updated Chromebook for my 11th grader, and he loves the stylus. So they're able to do a lot more now. It's a great improvement. So kudos to Mr. Oliver.
Thanks, Mrs. Sarsfield. I'll tell him when I see him tomorrow.
And thank you for letting me know, because I had no idea. And I also have an 11th grader. So now I have something to bug him about.
A talking point.
Always looking for something to talk about. Thank you all. I know we've talked about Spartan Flex, but I felt like I would be remiss not to put it on the agenda here because it is a really exciting blend of what's good for our students and then where it came from. So when Dr. Yannicka and I had the opportunity to do our superintendent's advisory councils last year, one of the things that middle school and high school students all spoke about is how much they liked asynchronous Wednesdays for different reasons. While they were not popular with families, I think students really were able and talked about a lot how much they were able to regulate their own learning, to go and work with a friend, get tutoring or help from one another, organize their time, pace themselves, do a little more exploration on something, more review on another thing, but that ownership of the learning belonged with the place where it belonged. The ownership for the learning sat with the place in the place that it most belonged, the student themselves. And so by creating the Spartan Flex, both at the middle school and high school, and quite frankly, for our teachers, we created a Flex program for them too, for professional learning. We're really trying to personalize these opportunities in meaningful ways to allow students and staff to activate and access resources and supports that help them to be successful in the work that they're doing. And so I just wanted to be, bring it here just to let you know that it was happening and how successful it's been. Certainly a learning curve, but both the middle school and high school are finding ways to create new learning spaces for their students so that we can access every square foot of our buildings to allow students that freedom of opportunity to move around, to think, to play a game, to talk to a friend, to get tutoring. And so we're finding that balance and working with our staff to really encourage students to own that, fostering and deepening those relationships so that I might come to your room for extra help, not because you're my teacher anymore, but because I trust you and because it feels comfortable to be here. So continuing that idea of belonging, connectivity, and ownership of that learning. So I think we're really excited to talk about it with you. And my anticipation is that we bring some students to talk with you about it later in the school year at a Spartan Spotlight. But we need to get a little further down the line before I'm ready to invite them to come talk about it. Questions or comments on Spartan Flex?
I've only heard really great things. I actually was in the building for a meeting during a Spartan Flex time, and of course that you can have that now, which is so nice. There's opportunity in the day rather than having it before school or after school. It's a lovely way of being able to do that. But it was so great to see kids in every nook and cranny, just, in their little, groups and really connecting. So I really liked that in terms of building community back. And, in terms of what I've heard from feedback from my one cohort, yeah, is very good. We were kind of skeptical having heard it, and I think it's been a very welcome and nice experience for all. So, yeah.
I think trusting our students to take care of their learning in ways that make sense for them is really hard for all of us. It's a really great opportunity for growth for our teachers, for our community, for our families, to really see the students have that opportunity for that freedom in their day and not feel like it's wasted. So I agree with you. I think we all had, no one more than Dr. Rittenhouse worries that this could implode. But the team did a wonderful job of really seeking advice from other school districts, including Lower Merion, who used this. And Dr. Rittenhouse and his team really brought teachers and administrators to talk to his own faculty about this, what was going to work, what wasn't, here's some advice. So really connecting us to the greater community of learners of high schools, and then bringing that same thing and modifying it, but continuing to build that idea with our middle school learners. So it's been a work in progress for a number of years, but we finally hit the right time and the right approach.
And I really like, so it's such a great remedial time as well. I mean, in terms of, so people who have sports or for whatever reason, in the past, they were just, people would leave and there was no, you just have to kind of make it up when you could. And now you can go in during Flex before you're leaving and, get all that information, maybe, have a little tutorial. It's just a really great, it's such a, yeah, I'm
Thanks, Ms. Sarsfield.
Very happy.
I really think that that's where the team was so excited about it, because it created time that did not exist in the 4-block system. So having a little bit modification and then pulling this time out really is good for students and our staff, because I think it also allows them a chance to collaborate and be engaged with students in a different way. Thank you all. And last but not least, the dreaded Act 13. For reasons that surprised me as an educational leader, the Department of Education launched a new teacher evaluation process as of September 1st of this school year. Again, we have no input to the timing of that. It was shared with us that we would be implementing it this year. So the teacher evaluation system in the Commonwealth is changing for all teachers. The idea of and the purpose of that change is to increase the impact of observation and evidence from the classrooms on the teacher's evaluation, and to decrease things that are outside the teacher's direct control. And so as a result, we are providing some training for our administrative team and our teachers to make sure they understand what this means and will mean for them. There are some other logistics, but those are the big ideas. Is it's really increasing the focus on observation and evidence. within our classrooms. And so just in case you hear about Act 13, that's what it is. We have it under control. Mrs. Kara and I are working with the administrators next Monday to do their training, and then we'll be rolling out some training materials to them and then joining them in faculty meetings to take any other questions to make sure they're clear and are supported in the rollout. So the timing is hard, but we're going to make it happen. Any questions or comments?
My only comment, this was a well-detailed, thoughtful meeting with so many new and exciting projects on the horizon. So for that, I thank all of you and your work and your continued effort to make the best out of our students. So for that, I'm thankful.
Thanks, Dr. Etlin. I appreciate that. We tentatively talked about meeting every quarter. That would put us around December. Dr. Yannicone and Dr. Etlin and I, the three of us, can connect and see what our topics are. At this time, I do not plan to bring you any curriculum adoptions in December. I believe we're going to take just a minute and implement the curricular materials we've been purchasing over the last few months. So any updates that you're interested in or that we have to share, we can talk about sort of if that's a good time to meet in December, whether it would make more sense in January. So it's up to you.
Do we know when the reorganization meeting is in December?
Dr.
Yes.
Yannicone?
Yes, it's December. I believe it's the 7th, D-Day. So Tuesday, December 5th.
So I would say either November or January, just because by December 7th, we may not know who's going to be on this committee.
Sure. That's a great point.
Because I know Tamina and Kat will not be here anymore. So
Right. Yes, we will have new committee members. Thank you, Tamina and Kat. I think that just given where we are in the curriculum cycle for revision, it's more likely that a winter meeting, which could even be as late as February, probably makes more sense than quarterly just for this year. Because as Dr. Johnston said, we really don't anticipate another adoption, perhaps in the spring. We had a number of adoptions, you may recall, this past spring and summer in world languages and in secondary social studies. And so I think it's more realistic that it would be a winter meeting. And then we may need a spring and a summer. We may still end up with 4 meetings, but I don't know that, I think November, December, we're unlikely to have a topic that's critical for us to meet.
that makes sense to me.
Okay. I do know, Dr. Johnston and Dr. Etlin, that we have one community member who's attending the meeting, and I just wanted to give that person a chance. Oh, she's no longer here. So I was going to give her a chance to see if she had any questions, but it doesn't appear that we have any questions from the community because the last agenda item is a comment from the community.
Of course.
And Gretchen, you've not seen the last of me because honestly, I might be in 5th grade social studies.
All right.
Because that seems really exciting to me. So you see an adult student in the back of the class.
I'm just really excited. A history textbook that you can actually write in and highlight, and it's not this big, you know.
That is
cool.
amazing. I tell you,
that's great.
It's great.
I am
That thing is heavy, let me tell you.
excited for 5th grade social studies. Yeah.
Well, and I just have to say, because I said it to Dr. Johnston privately, if you do that math, we will likely have somewhere around 1,300 students over 6 years.
Amazing.
So 6 years of consumables, not including the digital resource, which is robust. You're talking about roughly $20 per student.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
This is an unbelievable, I was shocked at the quote, shocked. I thought somebody made a note.
In a positive.
But this is a real,
That's great.
a really, really reasonable resource for our students. Not to mention the fact that the team did a phenomenal job reviewing 6 different resources that are out there. So kudos to Dr. Johnson.
Appreciate all of your support, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Of course.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rest of your evening.
Have
Thanks,
a good
everyone.
one.
Bye.